Today is February 23rd, 2023. An average of 163 cases were reported in Charlotte-Mecklenburg County, which is a 50% decrease over the last 2 weeks. And in this week, there were 163 reported cases of COVID-19 in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg County, which shows a 15% decrease over the last 2 weeks. Therefore, each subject is comfortable not to wear a mask. The purpose of the Living Archive project is to gather, preserve, and share local history, stories, documents, visual imagery, and memories about the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on Black, Hispanic, Asian, Indigenous, and other minority communities in Mecklenburg County by means of audio and/or visual recorded interviews, documents, photography, and written work. The night school here at Queens is partnering with them to help conduct 6 interviews per group, which will fulfill the community service portion for our capstone class. Hi, my name is Kaya Shroponde Scarborough. I am a senior at Queens University of Charlotte. I am majoring in communications, minor in sports management, and will be graduating in May. And then if you want to introduce yourself.
Well, hello, I am Dr. Carla Jones. I am the program coordinator and assistant professor of sport management here at Queens University of Charlotte.
Awesome. Okay, so I kind of had you do this map activity, and I just wanted to know what kind of stood out to you when you were drawing your hand?
I like the fact that you got to point out more pronouns and adjectives that describe you, and the other things were just kind of like a subset of that, because looking at the hand and going down, I feel like the things that I wrote out within each finger kind of fed into those. And lastly, having the support system surround the hand, I felt like that was pretty cool because I feel like that actually shapes the adjectives and the pronouns.
So what feelings came to mind when you thought about the COVID-19 pandemic and writing that out on your hand?
I actually wrote lonely and odd. At the start of the pandemic, I'm a very, very busy active person. Literally had just went to the CIAA. I volunteer and I hang out with my family because they primarily went to Bethel State during the CIAA. Therefore, we just came off of that, having a great time, had things planned back to back to back. And when I found out that everything was getting shut down, I was actually speaking in front of a congregation about the importance of heart health for the American Heart Association, because I was supposed to do a speaker series. And in addition, it was, I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and me and my line sisters were celebrating our 10-year Delta versary in Jamaica, and all of a sudden, all of that got shut down and taken away. So I went from a very busy, active lifestyle to the next day at home by myself, because I'm single, no kids, and my family primarily lives in different places in North Carolina and around the US. And what was odd about it was the shutdown, because in my lifetime, there has never been a shutdown of closing airports, stores, businesses, curfews, or anything like that. So I found the whole thing a little bit lonely and odd.
Gotcha. So what is something that you feel like you've gained from the pandemic after all those losses that you feel like you had?
I wrote down a reset and a refocus. It was definitely a reset for someone that goes all the time. I had to learn the importance of having downtime. And I think someone that's single, you also have to learn that it is okay to be single. And you have to actually find things that you are good with doing by yourself. And it also helped me find creative ways to keep engaged with my family. For one cute example is, even though the movie was not the greatest, the Wonder Woman movie, 1984, I think had come out. So what me and my cousins did was we all got HBO Max and we all started the movie at the same time, and we watched it. We watched each other on Zoom as we watched the movie. So different ways to re-engage. As far as refocusing, it gave me some time to think about what I want to do career-wise, social-wise, and just kind of re-examine myself. Therefore, those were pretty great about it.
Awesome. And then who was your support system during the pandemic?
Definitely friends and family. During the pandemic, you really get a handle on who you were actually close with prior to the pandemic, because those were primarily the people that you kept in contact with. And those instances where they'd be like, isolate, things like that. You still had 2 or 3 people where it'd be like, you want to go outside for a walk because you knew that they were being safe, and you can actually have conversations with them and you actually connect. So I had a set group of people that I actually saw during the entire pandemic that I would hang out with. So I think it just helps you see what family members and friends that you were really close to, because those are the ones that you basically had to rely on during the pandemic.
Okay. So we're gonna be done with the hand map activity. So if you want to put it down or put it away, we
I'll
won't
miss
need
you.
that. Okay. So just getting to the basic questions. Where's home for you right now?
My hometown is Fayetteville, North Carolina, so I still consider that home, even though I've more been in Charlotte longer than I've lived in Fayetteville. So I was born and raised military town, but I've been in Charlotte, North Carolina since 2002, so I would consider that home now.
Where were you born?
Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Fayetteville. Okay. So how long have you been in the Charlotte area?
Since 2002.
Awesome. So describe your experience in the last 2 years, and more in the COVID-19. You talked about a little bit in the beginning, but what has really been your experience in these last 2 years? Also being a professor and just being all around.
So all around, these last 2 years have been an adjustment. The things that you want to do can't necessarily do them the same way. Most notably, I'll start with my sorority work. A few programs, I entered in a national leadership program, and those that did the program before me were able to travel all around the US, were able to meet with each other in person and make those types of bonds and relationships with very prominent Delta leaders. Unfortunately, I had to do my whole entire program virtually, which was really, really tough. Still glad I had the opportunity. And now I see the new cohort that's going through, they get to meet in person and do these different things. And so that was, kind of hard to see and difficult to know that I was in that 2-year span in which we had to be virtual. As far as being a professor, since my field of study is sport management, it was difficult. It was difficult not being able to have the students engaged within experiential learning, which is my biggest thing. I love to see them involved in, whether it's a 5K or a tournament, different things like that. Hadn't been able to fully do that with them. Now we're getting back in, which makes it difficult because since they didn't necessarily get that experience when they first got to school here, and even in high school, it's more difficult to motivate them to want to volunteer within the field, want to take advantage of opportunities. So I think those have been my biggest challenge, having to do some things that would have been awesome in person, having to do those virtually.
Yeah, what was that experience like doing everything virtually? Like I know a lot of the students now hearing just different experience and stuff, like being online. And I know a lot of the sports management students want to be in person and think it's better and they learn better in person. What can you describe that as on a teacher's point of view of things?
It was definitely tough for the sport management majors. As far as my classes is around 90% student athletes. So you're taking people that are used to getting up, moving, going places, and you're putting them online. And when you put them online, it definitely brings down their energy and motivation as well. In addition, you're talking about people that are going into a field where they have to have interpersonal skills. It's difficult to have and develop interpersonal skills via a Zoom box. And those students that you have to give a little bit more push in a Zoom box, you can't necessarily push them as hard to speak and ask questions. So having them in person in that interpersonal engagement is important because that's actually what they're going to do, whether they're going to be coaches, marketers, lawyers. They have to have that, and that is nothing you can really learn via Zoom or RingCentral.
Agree. So bringing it back to the beginning of the pandemic, what was that like for you? Do you remember the early days? What did you do during the lockdown?
I remember the early days because, as mentioned, when I found out, I was literally standing in a place and I started getting text messages from the American Heart Association, like, abort, end the session and, go home and be safe because everything was shutting down. And at first I thought it was just going to be for like 2 weeks. And so we had already, as mentioned, me and my law sisters had already played for Jamaica. I was teaching at maybe 3 or 4 different schools as an adjunct at that time. And, you had life planned out and then all of a sudden it stops. I used to live in a college side of town. And so I remember it well when everything got shut down, the college students that lived next door to me, they did not know what to do with their lives. So they actually partied every day and every night. And so I know a lot of people said, I got a lot of rest. It was downtime. I had a party going on next to me every day. But I tried to, refocus because I know they didn't know what to do. So let them have their fun. So what I would do was I watched a lot of movies. I actually taught virtually. And I had like a set schedule each day. Like I would get up, do this, because I tried to keep myself on a routine. Some days I would sleep and things like that. I started doing puzzles, started reading books, started doing DIY house stuff, and ended up selling a house and moving during the pandemic as well, because you have time to think about a lot of stuff. And like those college kids made me want to move. So I ended up moving to a side of town which had less renters and things like that. It was just interesting. And I think I started cooking a lot too. Started watching a lot of TikTok. I even joined, I can't remember what it was called, but I joined like a networking group where they were like doing panels and stuff via an app each night, and I would just join that. So I was just finding several ways just to stay engaged with people.
Describe your experience going out in public at the height of the pandemic. What did it feel like with masks, gloves, going into the grocery stores? Like, what was that experience for you?
So 2 things. I did not mind wearing a mask. If you think about it, that's how we get the flu and other things. So having to wear a mask due to COVID, perfectly fine. I didn't mind getting the vaccine or the boosters because I always get a flu shot as well. What was weird was stuff closing early, or when everyone bought up all the toilet paper and the soap and the bleach. That was really difficult to deal with. The other crazy things, like you can only go one way down an aisle. Just things like that was weird. You couldn't go to the movie theaters. That was tough because that's one of my things, is going to the movie theaters by myself during the middle of the day. Couldn't do that. And, just things such as that. Also is I'm not a hugger. So I was fine that, you couldn't, you had to keep 6 feet difference and things like that. So it was fine for me.
Was there a time that you stepped in and helped someone affected by COVID-19?
Yeah, well, actually, not necessarily going to their houses, but we knew a few people that even as of last year that was getting quarantined. So typically what we do is me and some of my friends and stuff will send them groceries and things like that. Some people were heavily under the weather, affected by it when they got it. Some people don't have symptoms, but some have really bad symptoms. So for the most part, I've sent people groceries, just checked on a few people. I do know a couple of people that passed away due to complications of COVID. And so I think for the most part, those people definitely had to be there for them because they were not expecting that to happen.
So how would you say your relationships with friends, family was like during the pandemic, and how has it changed overall since then?
So as mentioned earlier, as you think about and look at it, the people that you spoke to during the pandemic, those is more than likely was your core group of people. And, before the pandemic, you probably just had a lot of, acquaintances and things like that. During the pandemic, you realize who your true friends are. And you also realize what family members that you were close to. The ones that you weren't close to, you necessarily didn't talk to or see or hear from that much. But I feel like it brought a bond back together because everyone was forced to slow down. You were forced to slow down and at times forced to speak to each other and engage with each other. Therefore, I think it actually made friendship and family bonds a little bit stronger.
Okay, so moving away from that a little bit and going to just your routines, like, do you feel like that's changed since the pandemic? Like, what did that change look like from your normal routine and then going into the pandemic? And then now, do you feel like it's changed, kind of remained the same? Where do you feel like you're at with that?
I feel like we skipped, fast forwarded from 2020 to 2023. I feel like at this very moment now, I am back to where I was from 2020 to now. During that time, did not completely feel that way. And I still can kind of see things work-wise. Once people got out of the being in office for hours a day, they're not doing it as much. And some people are actually preferring to work remotely now that that's become an option. So I've noticed that you don't really get the full office experience at work anymore because people are choosing to want to work from home. But for me, I still try to come in and be here, engage with colleagues, be there for students and things like that. I did not start going back to large sporting events or public events until last year. I'll be looking at people like, y'all still know there's a pandemic going on. So I didn't start going to games or events or even birthday gatherings or anything like that until around last year. But now we're completely out there, and I feel like things are basically back to the way they were before 2020.
I guess that gets into my next question. Like, do you feel like the pandemic has, since you said that you're in the sports industry, do you feel like it's changed it a lot? Do you feel like it's gone back to normal completely? Like, where do you feel like the sports industry is, and where do you see the future for the sports industry?
I think the sports industry really wanted to get back to normal quick. Some areas may have rushed it a little bit too fast, not necessarily waiting it out or anything like that. And some probably lifted guidelines a little bit too soon. But it's kind of understandable because it was affecting their bottom line. Entertainment business and sports is about having people interacting with each other in enclosed spaces, unless it's an outdoor venue. But I think the sports entertainment industry really needed to find a normal. Now, I think what they may have learned from it is if it happens again, they can jump quicker into action on how to pivot. They did not know how to pivot in 2020 when it happened, so they just basically had to shut everything down. Now, if something comes up again, I feel like they've learned from it and they know how to pivot a little bit better so they can actually keep running their business and their bottom line.
Yeah. So what long-lasting consequences do you feel like came from the pandemic that can be pertaining to you? If you want to talk about the sports industry, what do you feel like the long-lasting of those consequences were?
I think a long-lasting one is, I think it's going to take a while for the world as a whole to recover financially from this. A lot of people were affected. A lot of people lost their jobs. There's still a lot of people on unemployment assistance and things like that as it relates to the pandemic. A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people aren't hiring as well. And if you look at the markets, like I said, I bought a house during the market, and right before the boom happened, I had signed my contract. My house was worth around $50,000 more before I even got the keys. And those things were difficult people. Some people want to buy houses and things like that, and they can't because during that particular time, everything just skyrocketed out of control. So I think it's going to take a while for things to readjust. And work-wise, I feel like there's a lot of people out there who are looking to be professors or looking to work in the sports industry who had to take jobs in cities or places that they didn't really want to be in. And now they're trying to get to the place where they want to be, but the jobs are kind of limited at this particular time.
So do you feel like those are the main challenges? Like, what are some challenges that you feel like also came from the pandemic as well?
Other challenges, I would say for the most part, I feel for those that have graduated from high school during the pandemic. I always tell people I feel like high school and early years of colleges are, in most cases, the best years of your life. And to not have graduations, proms, freshman year, losing eligibility for sports and things like that, I actually feel for those students. And I think it did completely affect them. And that just kind of like their normal and exactly what happened. So I think that is one of the challenges definitely for the Generation Z. I think they were probably affected the most by it. I would say also another challenge was if you had like a grandparent or older relative that was in a home or a facility, you couldn't see them during the pandemic. So my story was my grandmother had dementia and she was in a facility, but when it shut down, we didn't get to see her. And so she actually passed away in 2021. And I wasn't able to see her since 2019 because, saw her Christmas 2019. I'll see her again in a couple of months when I go back home. But March hit, couldn't go and visit her. And, that's unfortunate. I saw videos and stuff of people looking at their loved ones through windows and things like that. For someone with dementia, they don't know what's going on during those situations. And so you can't be there to care for them. So that was a very difficult challenge. And I know, like I said, one of my friend's husband, I probably didn't say that, but one of my friend's husband passed away due to complications of COVID, but they weren't allowed to go and see them during that final time due to COVID. So I would say that was very difficult for myself and other individuals.
Wow. Kind of moving away from, the negative and the sad parts of COVID-19, what are some good things you've learned through your experience during the pandemic?
Even though I said it was lonely and odd, as mentioned, it was kind of fun, still finding creative ways to engage with family and friends. And the funny thing is, I saw a video where I think it was Tiffany Haddish and Common. They did a Zoom date. And I actually did that with one person that I was talking to during that. And that was pretty fun because you kind of like cook your meals and you both sit down with the meals. Just finding creative ways to do that. Me and my friends, we got really active and we were going to Crowder's Mountain constantly. Crowder's Mountain is probably about 40 minutes outside of Charlotte. We were doing that. Like I said, we did a lot of TikToks, videos. That was fun and creative. But I just felt like it was a great reset and a refocus for me. I enjoyed a lot of parts of it.
How do you think it shaped you overall as a person?
I think it showed me a lot of things. Far as, I know a lot of people are weary about the vaccine and the booster shots. Just showed me that those things don't necessarily affect me that much. I didn't mind getting those and the boosters. Did I want to be the zero patient to do it first? No, not necessarily, but was okay with doing that. And also taught me that I'm okay with adjusting quickly and adapting to different and new environments, and that I'm okay with being alone if I had to be alone.
And what do you think the future will look like for you going forward?
Like I said, I think we're back to normal. I don't foresee, but I can't say another shutdown like that. If something does come up, I feel like since we've experienced COVID-19, that we're better equipped to handle it if it comes again, because I don't think we've had anything like that since like a measles outbreak or a polio outbreak, which was well beyond our time. Therefore, I think if it happened again, we pretty much know what to do and we know how to get assistance for it and we know what parameters we should put up. And social distancing is probably still a thing.
Getting into like the probably still a thing. Like, how do you feel the transition of it, I guess, like just restrictions and accommodations come and go? What do you think about that? Like wearing a mask, not wearing a mask, social distance, but you don't have to social distance. Like, what do you think how you think that is?
Yeah, I'm one of those people that when you're standing in a grocery store line and someone's too close, I still want to say 6 feet, but I don't. I still think for the most part that we should practice a little bit of distancing. Definitely if you know you're sick or coughing or recovering from something or even allergies, because these days you don't know if it's COVID or allergies, I think we all need to practice a little bit of distancing. Now I know when I feel a little congested, I just go ahead and put on a mask. Because it's not uncommon anymore to see people with masks. And then in my classes, if my students start coughing, I'll be like this and put it on and to continue. We just got to be a little bit more cautious, but it's not a bad thing. If you think about it, you got COVID, but do you honestly want to get the flu as well or a common cold? You really don't. So I think we got to start looking at them all the same and not necessarily a negative thing. I think there's still a negative, you get negative connotation or tone when you mention COVID, or people say, oh, you got COVID. But I'm like, do you do that to people when you got the flu or something like that? Probably not. So I just think we just got to start looking at it like something that's not going to go away, and it's okay. And social distancing is fine, and not wanting to be in enclosed spaces that don't have ventilation is fine. I think we do need clean air, things like that.
Okay, so do you feel like you have any additional stories or experience you wanted to add? Like I know during 2020 and the pandemic was at its height, Black Lives Matter kind of broke out and it affected a lot of the African American community. Do you have any additional thoughts to add pertaining to that? Or do you feel like you have your own experience that you want to add into it? Like I know another student mentioned how he was part of a protest and that really was a life-changing thing during the 2020 and shaped him overall. Like, do you feel like you have any experiences that you want to add?
That was definitely a difficult time, and being that because everyone was in the lockdown, the social media coverage, the media coverage, I mean, I'm sure it weighed heavily on everyone. And far as me, I was limited in the different things that I could do because not a lot of it was going on in our city, except for I think one time I was driving uptown, I think a protest had broke out. And the scary thing about that is I didn't know what was going on. All of a sudden, cop cars just started zooming past me and told me that, you had to leave and go home. So I went home to go watch on the news, and that's when I saw, things that's going on and the amount of force that was being used in the streets. And it's kind of like, and I think one person was actually shot in one of those instances. And it's kind of like, some things just aren't necessary. And then when you look at those things and, the people getting arrested or even the family members, they probably felt really alone during that time as well because all you had was social media and social engagement during those particular times. So for me, it was just hard to see and not really fully being able to do much about it on my end.
Yeah. So do you have any photos, writings, or artwork or video relating to your experience that you would like to share or any additional thoughts that you would like to add?
I could, probably fun stuff and, like I said, a lot of about serious stuff. But actually, now that you mention it, I did do a social action video as well. Filmed it with a lady. We did it over at UNC Charlotte, could share that. And just the fun stuff, fun side of, like I said, engaging with friends, doing the videos and virtual things. I could share those if you like.
Oh, yeah, for
If you
sure.
want to see me do TikToks.
Yeah, if you have those videos, let's definitely bring those in.
All right. So as mentioned, we did several different TikTok challenges. So I'll just show a couple. So each year, me and my friends are used to doing the Novant Health marathon relay. And so we couldn't this one year, but we still wanted to train together. So we did a video where each of us were running and we were like handing off a water bottle to each other. I'm the videographer, of course.
So you really learned how to do technology.
That's the ending. Her daughters want to participate. But, then we used to go to Crowder's Mountain. So we did like all of the trends during the pandemic. And this is like my favorite. We social distancing. So that was fun to do. And this was actually at the Greenway. As you can see, I did a lot of walking and running during the pandemic.
So technology and social media.
This is our step team. So it was just fun ways of being able to stay engaged and that was fun. So yeah, I think what kept me sane mostly was just engaging and doing videos.
So technology and social media really like played a role into your life during the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
So I know also being a professor, you always emphasize to us to always make sure to have accurate sources and make sure everything. So was it hard like being on TikTok and being on these different social media sources and not knowing and differentiating between what's real, what's right, what's wrong?
Oh, yeah. So that was definitely a difficult thing because during that time, what do they say? It's called fake news and stuff was going on. So yeah, so as you mentioned, as I tell my students, you got to verify the source. You got to look at where the source is coming from. If it's coming from a .org, a .edu, or a .gov, it's more than likely valid information, whether it's about the pandemic or anything like that. You also got to be wary of your news stations. My recommendation is don't just watch one news station because, for example, if you just watch CNN, you're just getting one perspective. If you just watch MSNBC, you're just getting that perspective. If you're just watching Fox News, just getting that. You have to watch them all and then go and do your own research, because if we don't research and think about things for ourselves, then we're just going to go along with what everyone is telling you. So yes, researching facts is important. That's why for me in social media, I like lighthearted things on social media. I don't necessarily engage in serious conversations or serious debates or serious topics on social media. I actually will read about it, research it, and watch the news outlets for serious information. I use social media for fun.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to add in the conclusion of this interview?
No, I just, as mentioned, well, I guess, yes, as mentioned, this probably was a difficult time for everyone. Everyone probably had a different experience. Some people enjoyed it. Some people had a hard time. Some people experienced losses. My hope is that everyone is actually healing from it at this point and have learned something or took something away from it that was also positive and a learning experience. So I just hope for healing for everyone.